All right, guys, we are here. New York Got Game live. I was going to say Knicks Weekly, but we've just finished doing post game, so it's not weekly. Dexter, Henry, Bryan, Fonseca here. And we're here because breaking news.
Yeah.
Dropped at about 2:40-ish today. The Knicks announcing that they are firing Tom Thibodeau. Our own Stephen Bondi broke the news that the Knicks are relieving Tom Thibodeau of his duties. This is something Bryan and I have talked about for quite some time throughout the postseason because there were fans calling for his firing. Their fans have been calling for this for a couple of years. I have a lot of thoughts on this. We're going to get to that. We have a lineup of guests that'll be joining us at 4 or 5. We have Gerard Hector from True Hoop. Then that'll be followed by Mike Vaccaro, great columnist for the New York Post. And then from Knicks Film School, we have John Schmeelk, followed by Jeff Johnson, guys who've been on the show all before. But Bryan, I'm going to ask you this. News came down. I was getting out of an Uber when I saw it on my phone.
I was home.
News. What is your reaction to this? Because I want to say it's shocking in one way, but then kind of not shocking. So what's your reaction to this fire?
It's very surprising until you think a little bit more about it. Like, we understood the possibility was always there. This is something that we talked about extensively, as Dexter mentioned, throughout the playoffs, and how could you not? We even went to the Celtics series with the mindset that, hey, if they look overmatched in this series, he's probably going to be out. They ended up winning the series, and we were like, okay, maybe he saved his job. And then when you look at the context of how he looked and how the Knicks looked in that Pacers series, it's kind of like, oh, maybe they actually need to go in a different direction. So to me, it was always this. I think there's legitimate questions about whether or not he's the right guy, he's the right fit for this roster. But in totality, it's like, I'm not sure if you're going to find somebody better. The Knicks clearly do think that they're going to find somebody better. I think you make this move knowing what you want.
Well, you better know what you
want.
Yeah,
they'll canvas, they'll do interviews, they'll do all these different things. And we have a list of candidates on my phone that I wrote you that I'm like, this is the list of people who will not surprise me. We'll get to that. But in terms of like what's next, I think they have a pretty good idea. They have to have a really good idea of what they want. And Leon Rose, we know, like, he's been smart. I've joked, but actually seriously said he's been the best Knicks GM of my lifetime. And this is basically like going back 3 decades at this point. I think they know what they want.
Well, if you trust Leon Rose, you trust the process you've seen with him, you're going to have to at least try to trust this move. I just want to say what Stephen Bondi had reported here. He said the team felt it's in the best interest of getting to the next level of winning a championship. I think that wording is absolutely interesting. He said the decision was Leon Rose's, who you just mentioned, with the owner's support. So James Dolan was behind this, in supporting this. He's behind this. I think the wording and the fact that it was in the best interest of getting to the next level. Now, the next level's got to be clear on this. The Knicks were 2 wins away from the NBA Finals. The goal is to win a championship. I will say this. Whether you are Team Thibs or you're not Team Thibs, this move puts the players, which I always say have agency, on notice.
They have more agency now. More agency.
It's like, hey, this for some of y'all, Jalen Brunson, this is your guy, right? Josh Hart, this is your guy, but we don't think he can get us to where we got to go. Y'all got to be better, and I have zero problem with that at all whatsoever. Now, to your point,
about that, actually,
you got to get this right, though. And I think you have to get a coach that is different from Thibs. And number one, I would say, and I'm sure our first guest is going to talk to us about this, it is playing guys, playing a deeper rotation so you can narrow the gap between yourself and the elite teams in the NBA, the 2 teams that are playing in the finals starting on Thursday. That's got to be better. So we'll see. I'm going to bring in our first guest who's just joined us here. You know him from True Hoop. My guy, Gerard Hector, the one and only from True Hoop. Gerard, what's going on, man?
What's up, Playboys? What's going on in New York City today? Not a whole lot, right? Just a normal day. Nothing happening.
Nothing happening, man. Nothing happening. Just, a coach.
Just regular day, Gerard.
Regular day, man.
We're just having you here for absolutely nothing.
Oh, man, we talk about the Mets, right? They beat the Dodgers last night. That was fun.
That was fun. I actually stayed up for that.
Gerard, as somebody who's historically, I would say you're not anti-Thibs, but you're not necessarily a Thibs guy, is how I'll word it. Just general reaction to this, now that you've had an hour and change to digest it.
I know, right? So much time to digest it. I mean, in a way, I could sort of see it, but in another way, I think the Knicks have to be careful. Dex, I heard you coming in saying, they were 2 wins away from the NBA Finals. I think we need to kind of pause and be a little bit more analytical when we look at that 2 games away from the finals. Yes, that is what the final stat line says, because it was a 4-2 series win by the Indiana Pacers. However, the Knicks' 2 wins only came in desperate situations. Down 0-2, they had to win that to not be down 0-3, and then down 3-1 so they wouldn't get beat at home. Like, my point is the gap, I think, between the Pacers and the Knicks is wider than I think most fans and most people want to admit. That's number one. Number two, I think in terms of coaching, right? And this is, we talk about this offline about other sports. Pragmatism to me is the name of the game in the modern sports world. You have to be pragmatic. Have your principles and what you believe in terms of, we believe in offensive rebounding and blah, 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 right? Those kinds of things. But ultimately, how we get to our desired result, a win is a win, man. We're going to do whatever is necessary. And Thibs, as good as a coach as he is, and I want to be fair to him, excellent defensive coach. I think he was a little bit slow on the offensive end, and I think he's not pragmatic, right? And look, man, the teams are too good nowadays for you to be so dogmatic in your approach that you cannot be flexible and say, let me try something different. Let me do this, right? Ty Lue is the example I always use. Ty doesn't give a you-know-what. Oh, that's not working? Cool. Let me try something else. Because the name of the game is to get wins, right? We're trying to win a championship by any means necessary, right? I don't care what it looks like. I just want to win the thing. So to me, I think that's what the Knicks have to get right in their next coach. Whomever it is has to be pragmatic. And that may mean, Knicks fans, it might not be a name and that might be okay.
And that I'm okay with that. But I don't think some people are going to be okay with that, Gerard, because there's so much of we have to know this guy. And there's a lot of talk about Mike Malone. We're going to get to some names in a second, but I want to talk about what you just said there, because I agree with you on the part about, you can't be so dogmatic. You have to be pragmatic. And I wonder if a lot of this is what Leon Rose and company looked at when they made this evaluation for the team, right? They looked at this and said, hey, for us to get to another level, Tom Thibodeau needs to do these things. Maybe they asked him to do certain things, and I'm not reporting anything here, and maybe he did not want to do it. Do the Knicks get credit for saying bye to a coach that just led them as far as they have been in 25 years? Because that's going to be for the Thibs people that are defending him and say, hey, this coach took them as far as they've been in 25 years. Should we give credit for the front office for saying, no, we see a way we can be better than this. It's time to move on.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect question, Dex, because that's what Knicks fans are saying. This is the farthest we've been in 25 years. How are you going to get rid of this guy? And to a certain extent, I understand that type of mindset. However, you have to trust what this team has done. And I said this to you offline, Dex, to Knicks fan friends in my life, family members, etc. The Knicks have done the hard part, which is got themselves to a situation where they are a well-run franchise. In the last 5 seasons, you have made the playoffs 4 times. You advanced to the conference finals, okay? You have won more than 47 games, I want to say 3 times out of those 5 seasons. Like, the Knicks have done the good work. There are no bad contracts. Like, all the stuff that was haunted them for decades past, they've eliminated that. So they have done the good work. The question we have is, again, as you see the 2 teams in the finals, Indiana and Oklahoma City, and how they like to go deep into their bench. Do the Knicks even have a bench? How do we know? Right? Like, is Dadier any good? Is Kolek any good? Is Hawk Purdy any good? I don't know, because they don't play. So I have no idea if they're good or not. And maybe this is the Knicks front office saying, hey, man, we got draft picks we believe in. You and your staff did not develop them, nor gave them any playing time this season. This should not have been an issue for us. Because maybe the Knicks front office is saying, hey, we think our bench guys are just as good as Thomas Bryant, TJ McConnell at all on the Pacers, right? And to be fair, even Detroit went a little bit deep, right, in that series. So I think, again, this is the name of the game in pro sports nowadays. Talent is too good now across all sports, across all leagues, particularly in these leagues that play these massive calendar games. Seasons and schedules. You cannot win with just 4 or 5. Your starting lineup being good and then your bench being whatever. This isn't the 1980s or 90s. That era is long gone. If you cannot give your superstar players enough rest, because again, Dexter, we go back to that series. What were the deciding moments? Game 1, Obi Toppin free for a putback dunk. There were 3 Knicks around him. No one even jumped. Why? Because they were exhausted. out of bounds play, I want to say in game 2, the one where Toppin hit the wide open thing. Maybe it was like game 4, whatever game it was. Out of bounds play, which means you know what you're doing. 2 go to the ball inexplicably. Obi's wide the hell open. That was a mental error. Why? Because you're physically fatigued. Why are you physically fatigued? Because you played too many minutes, and not just in the series, all season long.
Right. No. I think you make excellent points there, and I think that you have to look at this situation and say, yeah, I do give the Knicks some credit for saying, hey, we're not just going to stand pat. Now, I will say this. I'm aware from talking to some people around the Knicks that, to the point you made about their bench depth, Gerard, there are people who were very high on Dadier, but he didn't play. There are people who were high on Kolex, why he got drafted and got the contract he did after the draft last year, but he did not play much. Huck Porty did see some limited action. I know there are people in the organization who feel good about this. I asked Stephen Bondy yesterday, of the young players on the bench, who he thought had the best chance to develop next season. He told me Dadier, to actually be a contributing rotation member. He said Dadier. So that is very much in alignment with what people around the Knicks have told me. We want to hear this from you, because we've talked about different coaches, and Brian showed me a list. He texted me a list of names. Brian, share the list with the people. Because
I want to ask Gerard about one person in particular.
Okay.
And that's Taylor Jenkins, because I know you're more familiar with Memphis than the average person even covering the NBA. Because I think if you're going to do this and you're going to replace Tom Thibodeau, which the Knicks are going to do, you need a philosophical change. A lot of people are throwing out Mike Malone when people within basketball would say Mike Malone is very similar to Tom Thibodeau and is also not coming with Nikola Jokic.
Are you saying that he's not as good without Jokic? Is that what you're saying?
We don't know, to be fair. I know he's from Queens, so am I, but I'm not sure if that's different enough philosophically for them. But Taylor Jenkins is one person I feel like is going to be under discussed. And obviously, the Knicks know, I think, what they want, who they want, what they're looking for. But can you speak to him or anybody else that you think, oh, this would make sense if you're making a philosophical shift from Tom Thibodeau?
I think Jenkins is a bright basketball mind, and it's interesting because this Knicks team in many ways is the opposite of what that Memphis Grizzlies team is, right? That was a young team that was up and coming that he sort of helped mold and develop, right?
Right.
And it was the only coach that Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. and Desmond Bane had up until the end of this season when he was fired, right? And there was talk around Memphis, not only in the fan base, but around people in the organization of Taylor just not being the right guy for this group now that they are at this new level, right? In that he might have been too lax in certain areas and their habits that this team being the Grizzlies, weren't able to break because he was not able to instill that in them. Well, those habits are already there because this is a veteran team from the New York Knicks, right? So perhaps a more, I don't want to say lax, but a more loose environment where, again, he would rotate and would play different guys as well from a tactical standpoint, a different strategy. I think that would be very interesting. I don't know, though, that Taylor Jenkins is suited for the New York City market. In Memphis, you're a big fish in a small pond, right? Like the team goes on a losing streak. All right, it's a thing, but it's not a thing, right? They start the season next year. Let's say you're high Taylor Jenkins and they go 7-10. Like it's going to be pitchforks and calling for his head, right? Like, I mean, that's just how it works, right? The back pages every other day, like all the stuff they're going to say about him. So I don't know if he is the right makeup. I think he's a bright basketball mind. I don't know about the daily grind of the back pages and all that and dealing with talk radio. And I don't know if that is right for him, but it would be interesting. I think, again, the Knicks need to start looking outside of traditional areas to think about whom they might want to hire. Look at Mark Daigneault, right? He coached Oklahoma City Blue. That's how and then he went to coach Oklahoma City Thunder. That's how he got that job. I know Malone's going to be popular. There's going to be even whispers probably about Steve Kerr out there, right? Like, re-flirting with the team. The team is in a better place than they were when they tried to get him the first time. So maybe, right? But to your point, Brian, he ain't bringing Steph Curry with him, so it might be a little bit different. But also, to be fair, Kerr will bring a completely different philosophy. As you know, Kerr hates stagnant ISO like that. That is it's allergic. He wants to throw up in his mouth when he sees that kind of basketball, right? So he will bring a completely different style. Do the Knicks want to play that motion-based, constant react, moving offense? I don't know, right? I don't know.
Let me throw more names at you because
Yeah.
Dexter mentioned a list.
Yeah,
I have a list of coaches who would not surprise me, and I'm not saying like this is who they should get because I don't endorse all these people, but I have a list of coaches where if we hear the Knicks hire this person, they would not surprise me at all. We already talked about Michael Malone, and we already talked about Taylor Jenkins. Johnny Bryant is obviously getting very popular right now. I think that's interesting. We can talk about him.
I do too.
Rick Pitino. I'm being dead serious.
Wait,
Patrick Ewing ain't walking through that door. Oh wait, is that was he? No, you might.
That's the one. That's the one on his list, Gerard. That I was like, no. One.
I don't think they. I don't know if they should.
I don't think Rick Pitino.
And
would
I don't.
even
And I wouldn't.
sniff
If I were him, I would not. I would just stay at
I
St.
don't
John's.
see him
But
doing that. I think
if-
he likes it.
I'm just saying, if you wake up one day and you're like, or if you wake up tomorrow and it's like, oh, Rick Pitino's in the mix, I would be like, yeah, I could see that. Doesn't surprise me a ton. Sam Cassell. He hasn't gotten a head coaching shot yet. He's been an assistant for a long time.
Do you want this to be his first head coaching spot?
Right. I don't. But again, wouldn't surprise me. Jay Wright.
Interesting name. Look, and to be fair, right? This idea of because you've never done it before doesn't mean you can't, right? We don't have to even go that far back to look at it. Look at Joe Mazzulla in Boston, right?
But
this
is now
took
a
over.
championship or bust. This is a championship or bust sort of hiring now, or at least finals or bust sort of hiring.
I mean, that's what Joe Mazzulla was it not?
Yeah,
They went to the finals the year before and the training camp
Right.
the next year.
Different circumstances, though. Because Joe Mazzulla wouldn't have been the coach if Ime Udoka wasn't messing around.
But you can also say that nobody else would have been the coach if the person before wasn't fired, right? Like, so
I think it's
it doesn't
wasn't that
matter.
late? Wasn't that later into the year? Also,
What,
like,
Mazzulla?
did
it was right before.
No, that was the day before training, literally the night
camp.
before training camp.
Right
Yeah,
before
so they
training
didn't have a lot of options, is what I'm saying. If they would have let Ime Udoka go like in May or June or whatever they got eliminated that prior year, then yeah, they probably would have canvassed the league and hire somebody else. Maybe, maybe.
My point, Brian, being that it worked out for them, right? Everyone now is like, oh, Mazzulla, what a great hire, right? So it's like it doesn't
Well, there's
have
questions
to be
now after this season, but fair point. Yes.
I mean, I think a lot. Look, the Knicks were specifically designed to beat this team. I think Boston also did some dumb things on their own, not necessarily coach related. I think the injuries to Tatum, Holiday was playing injured all year, and those levels dropped off, right? And I think, again, it's really important for that team to beat its optimal best. KP was a shell of himself, right? Those three players have to be elite, and they weren't, right? And so
Sure, yeah.
that was a problem. But be that as it may, my point being is that, again, just because it's someone you have never heard of doesn't mean that person can't be good, right? Like, they very well could be. Again, unique. The Knicks in New York offer a unique situation in that, can you handle all the BS around New York? And if you can, and you have a great basketball mind, because look, this team is excellent, right? I've talked about it a million times, Dex. The starting five of the New York Knicks is elite. Elite. I'd argue their top six is elite if you add Josh Hart, if he's coming off, or Mitchell Robinson, depending on whoever is coming off the bench.
Sure,
That's a great top six.
Yep.
The issue is you cannot win a championship with just six in today's NBA. That's what that is. So who else you got on there that can do some stuff? And will this new coach create that environment where that's possible?
And I think that's the key in finding a new coach. And I think something you mentioned too, Gerard, was the offensive versatility, right? Like that's if I've had a criticism of Thibs, it's been two things. It's the offensive versatility, and I've said this since like 2021, that the offense needed to modernize. I also have said that I thought one of the things, it's not about him making adjustments per se, because this is where I think it's a little unfair, because he did make adjustments this year in the playoffs. Some people say he didn't make adjustments in the playoffs. I'm like, did you watch the Boston series?
Yeah, he did.
He did. And now he did make adjustments in the Pacers series. You might argue it was too late in game 3. And that is fair, because then that goes back to my other point. He should have been playing 9 to 10 deep all season long,
right,
mixing and experimenting with different lineups, because that is how you win today in the NBA. Would like to see the next coach do that. This is where I got to give Leon Rose and company credit. Big if here, folks, if they said that and they looked at the whole situation, guys, and they said, hey, we got to modernize, we got to get more depth, because I do think the Knicks are going to address the depth issue this offseason. I do think they will. But addressing depth is cool, but if you don't have a coach who's going to play the depth, it does not matter, right? It doesn't matter at all whatsoever. So I think that truly has to happen. But in terms of an offensive mind, I guess this is what I'll ask you, Gerard. When you look at you said Taylor Jenkins, you think you're not sure he could be cut out for New York. But Mike Malone, I don't think is regarded as a great offensive mind. This is where I might like Johnny Bryan in this category. He's a finalist for the Suns job. He's been in the Knicks organization. Knicks players regarded him very highly in terms of player development, which I think is a key word here that we're talking about. I think Johnny Bryan, who's familiar with the organization, is good. It's almost like the Mark Daigneault thing. Mark Daigneault was within the system of the organization, coach in the G League. They bring him up. Johnny Bryan has some of the same ties to the players. I know a lot of some of the players he was really close with, like Randall, are gone. But what do you think about him as a name? Because he's a name I think that will be very intriguing, considering he knows the New York market's been here already. Even though it's his first time head coaching job, I say why not?
I love it because, again, I think he's modern, and I think he'll have different ideas about how to run an offense. Remember, last season he was under Kenny Atkinson in Cleveland with the Cavaliers, right? So, and we know Kenny learned a great deal being with Steve Kerr in Golden State and took that over to Cleveland. And remember, playoffs, what happened in the playoffs aside, again, Indiana was just a buzzsaw, and Cleveland also had health issues. The way Cleveland played basketball, especially offensive basketball this season, was a revelation, right? Like, they took another layer, another step in their journey, in their evolution as players. And I love it. I think, look, single high pick and roll is all well and good if you have Luka Doncic and Nikola Jokic as hubs in that single high pick and roll, right? Arguably the two greatest passers in the league, not named LeBron James, arguably two of the three greatest problem solvers in the league, right? Like, but if you don't have those kinds of players, that caliber, and again, when we're parsing out elite talent in the NBA, like Jalen Brunson is elite, but Luka Doncic and Nikola Jokic is a different level of elite, right? Like, completely different. And so the idea of playing tough basketball and not getting quality shots. Remember, I told you, Dex, this was my concern about the Knicks, in that I thought their ceiling for championship was not high because they're counting on him, on Jalen, to literally hit tough shots for 4 straight rounds. And I just didn't think that was possible.
You told me you didn't think it was sustainable. You didn't think it was something they could do. Yeah.
There has to be another way to get him easier shots. And you do that by having a more evolved offense. So I love the idea of Johnny Bryan, right? Again, someone who understands ball movement, player movement, off-ball cutting, right? Again, things that make the defense shift, react, and think, right? Which is what Oklahoma City does, which is what Indiana does, which is what Golden State does, right? Which is what some of the best offenses in the league do, right? The constant motion.
This is the one thing I think you got to look on the other side of it too for the Thibs defenders here, right? This is the first time the Thibs got this far to the Eastern Conference Finals, right? So
second overall, first with the Knicks.
First with the Knicks, sorry, with the Knicks. He did it with the Bulls. Some people are going to say this move is reactionary. I've been getting texts from people around basketball, not around basketball, the fans who say, hey, I don't like this move. This feels very reactionary by the Knicks. I don't necessarily feel that way, Brian, because I'm with you, and I'm also with Gerard in that I think the Knicks thought about this. They really evaluated the situation and looked at it. It'd be easy to have continuity. I'm about continuity roster, but sometimes you got to make a change. I like Thibs, but is this reactionary, Gerard, or did Thibs kind of shoot himself in the foot by maybe not evolving quicker?
Yeah, honestly, I think, look, part of the thing that like fans don't realize is when you're a competent run franchise like the Knicks are done now, Leon and William Wesley are in constant evaluation mode all the time of everything around them. And it's been 5 years they're watching this guy. And so they are seeing what is happening and they are evaluating him and they're saying, okay, yeah, we're better. All those principles are in, but the improvement in the critical moments we are not seeing, right? We're seeing the same issues hurt us. What hurt us last year in the postseason against these Indiana Pacers? Injuries because we were exhausted and got hurt. What hurt us this year? Exhausted because we played too many, right? They're like, okay, this is a common thing that has not changed, right? So they may have realized we've reached our ceiling with this guy, but we think this group can unlock a level that's even better with a different system and philosophy and ethos in basketball.
Yeah. I also think they're looking at the Celtics being hurt, the Cavs being vulnerable, the Pacers not necessarily being, while great, insurmountable, and looking at the landscape of the Eastern Conference, and they're saying, hey, the opportunity to do this is probably right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I do wonder, and Gerard, I want to throw this at you. How do you think this affects the roster? Like, do you think because of this, they're going to be more open-minded to moving certain guys like a Josh Hart, like a Karl Anthony Towns, basically anybody but Jalen Brunson? Because I don't think Mitchell Robinson, because I don't think Jalen Brunson's going anywhere. But how do you think, from what you know, this may affect the rest of the guys trickling on down?
Yeah, look, I think part of the thing about the Knicks being so good the last several years and also getting this conference finals, their players have been put on Front Street and now they've been advertised to the league for good and for bad, right? So you know all of Josh Hart's pluses and his minuses. You know all of Mitchell Robinson's pluses and his minuses and so on and so forth. I think, you know, Cat, I know a lot of fans are like, get rid of Cat. Guys, like, let me just, I promise, first of all, if you don't have Cat on this team this year, you probably get
honest.
No. If you replace him with Randall, who he had last season, right? Just like whatever. I don't.
Oh, you're talking about this year's team.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I think you get swept by the Pacers. I am not 100% sure you beat the Celtics, right? All things being equal. Cat is a lot better than people think, and I want fans to get this. Like, look, and we all know this. Like, Cat has a rep. And I won't use the word of what that rep is.
Yeah.
And fans let silly stuff like that influence how they think and make the decisions about is a player good or not, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Whatever you think about Cat as an individual or someone you want to chill with is irrelevant to his skills as a basketball player. That is an elite MFing basketball player. Elite. Okay. And not only elite, tougher than a lot of you guys give him credit for. That dude was hurt, all right, at the end of game 4, was it?
4.
Right? And gutted it out, right? And so so calm down with all that. That being said, yes, I do think certain players will be eligible for trade. Look, Bridges is on the last year of his deal, and he's making, I want to say, 24.9, 25 million, somewhere in that range. So that's a very attractive number for teams, and it's expiring. So someone might want that if they're trying to clear up cap space and move off another guy, whomever that may be. Remember, the way the league operates, and you guys know this, things look smooth, like you're on easy street one day, and then a day later, it's nightmare. All hell is breaking loose, right? That's just the nature of this league. So, so what you want may not be visible to you right now as a fan. You can't see it, but I promise you, it's out there, right? Something will happen. Some team's going to have a meltdown. Some stars going to want out. Like something is going to, because it's just the NBA, and it's just, that's how the nature of this league works, right? But I do think there'll be players that are available, and I think the Knicks may consider, okay, depending on what kind of coach they bring in, do you want to upgrade on the Josh Hart spot? We love his energy in terms of his offensive rebounding, and he makes winning plays. Can we get someone who does that at a winning level and is a better three-point shooter? I don't know. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of options for them, Gerard. There's a lot in terms of the roster, whether it's, you know, moving on from Hart, moving on from Mitchell Robinson, trying to get more players to expand the depth in the bench. Maybe whoever the new coach is might look at these players, because now everything is being evaluated. And this is what I think fans have to understand too. The coach has been evaluated. They made a decision. The roster is also going to be evaluated, and there will be decisions that are to be made. So some players may not fit in the new coach's vision, and that is maybe aligned, or hope it should be. We hope it's aligned with what Leon Rose wants. They have to be on the same page. And so this is why I also think Johnny Bryant is a very strong candidate here. I understand. I see some people in the chat talking about he's a finalist for the Suns job, so the Knicks have to move quick. He's a top 2 finalist. Yeah, except look, I know where I'd rather live, Phoenix or you know what I mean? I know how I feel about that. I don't know what he feels. A
little too hot for you in Phoenix? You don't want to deal all that heat all year round?
Listen, I got a homie who's out in Phoenix, and yes, it does get too hot out there. I don't feel like going to visit him in the middle of July. I have no interest in doing that. And that's my good friend. I have no interest in doing that. But I think the Knicks can be attractive to him, and I do think knowing the system, being on the same page with Leon Rose, are going to be qualities that are very important for them picking the next coach. So we'll see how it all plays out. Gerard, you overstayed your time. We appreciate you rocking with us, man. So much here on this live. And we'll
Listen, man, I love talking hoops with you guys. That's always dope.
Sure.
Look, Knicks fans, again, I know you have this feeling. I feel like a lot of Knicks fans in your heart, like, oh man, like you're so disappointed. And it's like, guys, you were a literal dumpster fire for almost 3 decades.
5 years ago. 5 years
Hot
ago.
Right.
garbage.
5 years ago.
Hot
years ago.
garbage.
I agree.
Okay?
Yeah.
You are now a well-run, beyond competent franchise. Most teams in the league who aren't still in the playoffs right now would kill to be the Knicks right now, today. Okay?
Yeah.
You're in good shape. The sky is not falling. Relax. Take a deep breath. Go outside, Brian. Do the kids still say touch grass, Brian?
Gerard, you saying orange and blue skies? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I don't know if it's orange and blue skies.
I
Brian, do the kids still say touch grass, Brian? Is that what the kids say still?
They do. Well, Mina Kimes isn't a kid, but she said that the other day.
Guys, go outside, touch grass, hug your loved ones. Like, just it's okay. I promise.
Well, also remember, here's the thing though: expectations make people anxious, and this is why Knicks fans are just very anxious right now. So I get it. Yeah. I get it. They're bugging out a little bit, but it's what it is.
You're in a good spot.
They're gonna hear what you're saying. They're like, yeah, I agree, whatever. But who's the new coach?
You'll find out. You'll find out when they hire the new coach.
Maybe before it could be this week.
Develop. It might be before the final start.
Yo, would they? It was random. Would they give Rick Brunson that coaching job?
Yo, so I thought of this. No. I was like, what if they? But I don't think they're gonna do that. That would be that would be kind of crazy.
That'd be wild. That'd be wild.
Kind of crazy.
I think Rick Brunson will get a position on whoever staff it is, but that's it.
Special advisor to Leon Rose,
something like that. Gerard, we got
special advisor to Jalen Brunson. I know that.
yeah, that's what he is. Gerard, we got to run because our next guest is here, but we appreciate you, bro.
All right, man. Good looking. Enjoy, guys.
Gerard Hector of True Hoop. Check him out there. All the great work he does with True Hoop and the podcast. And our next guest is here. We got some guests coming back to back. It's my guy. You see him do work with Knicks Film School. You also know him. Everybody knows this guy more for his work with the Giants. But my guy, John Schmeelk, joins us now. John, what's going on, man?
Gentlemen, busy day today, huh? Kind of a surprise.
Yeah.
Nah, this is totally laid back.
Totally laid back.
Just another day in New York City.
John, I was a little shocked, maybe not about the news, but more so about the timing of it. What was your reaction when you first heard this go down, and do you think this was the right move by the New York Knickerbockers?
I think it's an extremely risky move by the New York Knickerbockers. I mean, you've set such a high floor here. To your previous guest point, Tom Thibodeau took this team out of the abyss. I mean, this team was the laughing stock of the NBA. They were a literal punchline, and you had a head coach that is a very good NBA coach, not just an okay NBA coach, not just a good NBA coach. He's a very good NBA coach. So you are taking a risk of sacrificing that floor and a guy that, brings a certain level of competence to a basketball team. And you're going into the unknown now. And anyone that tells you that they know what type of head coach some rando assistant is going to be until they actually get the job is lying to you. All these people that are lying, oh, Johnny Bryant's going to be a great coach. Nobody has any idea. No, they don't. They really don't, especially on the outside. Now, do the Knicks maybe have a pretty good feel for what he brings to the table since he was in the building with them and all that stuff? Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
But otherwise, no one knows what assistant coach is going to be good. Do you remember when everyone thought getting David Fizdale was some coup off of the staff in Miami and what a great coach he was going to be? Everyone loved that move, right? How'd that work out? He was literally the worst NBA head coach I have ever seen with the Knicks. And we've seen some bad ones here, okay? So we don't know what's coming next. Now, maybe Leon Rose has some big surprise in his back pocket that is a sure thing. I'd be surprised. I don't think I don't know what the next move is. I don't think anybody does at this point. But this is a risky move. Was I shocked by it? Borderline. I mean, I think getting to the Eastern Conference Finals, and I think what eventually made the Knicks do this is the Knicks were a more talented team than the Pacers. And if you're a more talented team, you feel like you should win the series. And they didn't. The Pacers were greater than the sum of their parts, and I think the Knicks were maybe a little less than the sum of their parts. And I think that's ultimately what had them make the move to go away from Thibodeau. We could talk about this roster construction and what's important moving forward, but I think top line, he didn't get the maximum you could out of this roster with the way he coaches.
I think that's fair. I think that's a fair and logical assessment. This is why I reached out to you to come on, because I've watched you, John. We talked about this I think before the Boston series.
Yeah.
You and I chatted a little bit before too, and I think you're pretty measured in your overall look, and then critiques that you've even had of Thibs and the team. If we had the chance to make you Leon Rose, John, and I'm with you. I agree with you that while I think Johnny Bryant could have potential as a candidate, we have no idea. We don't know how good he's going to be. But what direction would you go in choosing the next coach? What kind of coach would you like to bring in here for the Knicks?
I don't have an easy answer, and that's why I probably would have kept Tom Thibodeau as my head coach, to be totally honest with you. Look, I think you make the phone call to Jay Wright. I think that's a conversation you have, especially given his ability to play 5 out with a shooting big man like Karl-Anthony Towns.
I think
point. That's a conversation you have, and is obviously his relationship to Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges. I think that's a conversation. I think, Johnny Bryant's a guy they have a lot of internal knowledge about. So if they believe that he's going to be a great coach, I would feel better about that than bringing in some assistant off another staff they don't have a great feel for. I mean, you always look at somebody off of Spoelstra's staff. He's a great staff. I think those are the guys you look at. I've heard Mike Brown's name mentioned around a little bit. I think he's a fine NBA head coach, but is he a better head coach than Tom Thibodeau? I don't know if that's the case, to be honest with you. So, and if anyone tells you Mark Jackson should be the next head coach, you just know never to listen to that person and their NBA takes ever again. No, it's the perfect Rorschach test. If you think Mark Jackson should coach the Knicks, don't respect anything that person has to say about basketball.
I've actually heard Mark Jackson's name.
Yes, I've heard.
I've
seen his name already
blocked
today.
people on Twitter immediately when I see that tape come up.
Yeah.
John, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Just because if they're doing this, it feels like they're going to change something philosophically. And it feels like it's going to be like not Michael Malone, essentially, who I think would be very similar to Tom Thibodeau.
And that's why I didn't mention his name, by the way. I agree.
Exactly.
I noticed that.
So I think if you're going to change philosophically, who do you think would be the ideal fit? Like, we toss out a bunch of names in terms of who it may be, but like, who would you want, I guess, would be the question.
Mike D'Antoni type coach. I'm not saying you bring back Mike D'Antoni himself, but I think assuming this roster is going to stay the same, and I think that's the second part of this conversation we have to have, right? You need someone that's going to maximize what Karl-Anthony Towns gives you offensively. Because there is not a coach on this planet that can make him a good defensive player. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
I'm not trying to be insulting.
You're right.
He's been in the league for 11 years, and he consistently has the same issues. That's not going to change.
Right.
It's just not. As a big 7-footer gets older, he's not going to become more agile, right? He's not going to become, if he didn't become a smarter defender yet, it's not going to start now. So you have to find somebody to maximize what he can give you offensively if you're going to use him as your center. Now, I don't think you maximize Karl-Anthony Towns if he's your power forward. I think it's something that minimizes or tries to minimize his weaknesses, but I don't think it maximizes his strength because you don't get 5s on him. And remember, as good as he was against Indiana never put the wing on him. And that's been the kryptonite to Karl-Anthony Towns. And it was the whole second half of the season too. So if I'm thinking about this offseason, you're right. If you're keeping the same roster, I do think you need more of a 5-out, more 3-point shot, more switching on defense. That's what I would look at in terms of what style you're going to go to. But look, I would still consider and think about whether or not keeping Karl-Anthony Towns is your best avenue to a championship. Because when I evaluate a team, I say, all right, heading into these series, what are other teams targeting and trying to take advantage of to beat you? And every team, when they play the Knicks, they circle 2 guys on defense with 2 red markers. One is your point guard, Jalen Brunson. One is your center, Karl-Anthony Towns. And we have seen teams everywhere mitigate the issues of one poor guard defender. The Pacers just did it with Tyrese Halliburton. You can do that. It's very hard to mitigate 2 bad defenders on the court, especially when one of them is a 7-footer. It's very, very hard. So I do think the Knicks have to look long and hard about whether or not you can win at the highest level. You can win at a good level. Can you win at the highest level if Karl-Anthony Towns is your center? or even your power forward for that matter. And I think that, because I do think you pretty much have to extend Bridges. And if not extend them, you have to trade him. But are you really getting, what are you getting back for him that's going to help you more? I don't know the answer to that. So I think the Karl-Anthony Towns question is the big one now that's going to kind of hover over this offseason.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, do you think this should trickle on down to the roster? Because it felt like if Thibs were to stay, you would mostly run it back, maybe make some moves around the edges that are cost effective and like try to fortify your depth, and maybe he plays it, maybe he doesn't. But now that you're switching the coach, it feels like nobody on the roster outside of maybe Jalen Brunson is safe, so to speak. Do you think this should trickle on down? Because you raise an interesting point. It's something we've talked about extensively. Can you win with Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns from a defensive perspective? Because historically, you still have to have like a top 11 defense to win a championship. Usually, like every defense in the last 25 years outside of 2 has been at least in the top 11. And if the Pacers would win, then that'd be a third, but we don't think that that's going to happen. So the roster question, like where are you at with the rest of the roster and how this could affect that?
Yeah, look, I don't think OG Anunoby's going anywhere. I think at his salary and then also just what he gives you as a wing defender, I think it'd be very difficult to trade him. Mikal Bridges, again, he's up for a contract extension. He has his faults that are frustrating, but he's not a reason the Knicks lost games, in my opinion. He's not a guy that teams go out there and target. They don't just leave him open. Without Thibs here, I do think trading Josh Hart becomes a real possibility. He's a good basketball player. I like Josh Hart. I think the way fans tried to blame him for all the team's issues in the playoffs, I think was frankly nonsense. Did he have a bad few games to end the Pacers series? Absolutely. But the cries were coming a lot, before those really bad games. But I think that becomes open. Yeah, I mean, Mitch is such a bargain right now. This last year, and Dex, we talked about this last offseason. People wanted to trade Mitch last offseason. I think both of us said, no, his value is too low. Well, he has built that value back up. Like, if he can play like he did in the postseason, even if it's 20, 25 minutes a game, you didn't get multiple first-round picks for a guy like that. Like, he played really well in the postseason. So, and I think here's an interesting question to think about. Were the Knicks their best selves, and by the way, including on offense, when Mitchell Robinson was at center instead of Karl-Anthony Towns? And if your answer to that question is yes, and frankly, even if you have to think long and hard about that question, whether or not it's yes, I think that should inform whether or not you should try to move Karl-Anthony Towns in a possible Kevin Durant trade, as much as he annoys me in the way he operates on social media. And it is frustrating to me. And I'm not a fan of his that way. If you run into next season and your starting lineup is Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Kevin Durant, and Mitchell Robinson, I feel pretty damn good about that starting lineup, to be totally honest with you.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said there about the fact of I'm thinking of your question actually now, John, about Mitchell Robinson, and I would say that from the playoffs, yes, I did feel like the Knicks' best lineup, best team was when Mitchell Robinson was on the floor. It really showed in Boston. I think it really showed in that series. I think there were times in Indiana, Game 3 is a great example where Mitchell Robinson came in and changed the game a lot for them. I guess a couple more things for you, John, before we let you go. I think another part of this, as Brian kind of alluded to, is like you're talking about, okay, if you get a new coach, how does it all work out with the roster and what should they do? I think you would agree with me. A big part of this with the Knicks, and some of this goes to Thibs, is depth. The Knicks need to add depth here moving forward. And the other part of depth, and I brought this up with our previous guest, Gerard, is the coach has to play the depth. So how important is it that the Knicks get a coach that's on that same page? Because I've heard, and I'll bring this up again, I've heard from people in the Knicks organization, they like Dadier, they like Kolek, they like Hakporti, they like some of these young players. How important is it that that next coach plays these guys towards the end of the rotation? Because this is where I'm out on the Mike Malone stuff, like you are too. People bring him up, and I'm like, but he does the same thing as Thibs. He does not play depth. That was the whole problem in Denver. How valuable is it to you that a coach is actually going to go 10 deep and play a modern NBA roster?
Yeah, I mean, I think player development is important, right? They're only going to have the taxpayers mid-level this offseason, which is around $5.9, $5.7 million. So, you let Precious go, you bring somebody in for that number. I love the idea, quite frankly, of having Chris Paul come in. If he's willing to sign for like a vet min or something around there as the backup point guard. I think he fits with the way Jalen Brunson plays. They both play kind of like a slow and steady way. I think they kind of match well together. I think the whole playing more guys off the bench thing was a bit of a red herring a lot of this offseason and postseason, to be honest with you. They basically added one guy to the rotation in the postseason, and that was DeLon Wright. They replaced Campaign with Shamet. So they didn't expand the rotation with that move, right? They just replaced one guy for the other. And then they brought DeLon Wright in. And, DeLon Wright, did he have some decent moments defensively? Sure. He couldn't buy a basket. He's passing up layups. He's missing wide open threes. And the reason that group's plus minus was so good is because they played all the non-Halliburton minutes, right? Like, he was never on the floor when Tyrese Halliburton was on the floor. That's why their plus minus was as good as it was, which is why I think plus minus can end up being an overrated stat sometimes, in my opinion.
Right.
But, during the season, would it be great to play Mikal Bridges 34 minutes instead of 37 minutes or 33 minutes instead of 38 minutes? Sure. But I think this comes down to getting the young guys on the court, right? And I don't think it was reasonable to think a guy like Pacome Daddy at 18 years old was going to help the Knicks win a title this year. I just don't think that was a realistic deal. And rookie point guards generally don't help you win basketball games as a rookie. That doesn't happen very often, especially once they get picked into 20. So that said, I think going into their second year now, look, we saw this even when Quickly was a rookie, right? Like, he didn't play much as a rookie, but then second year, more came. Same with Grimes, more came in his second year. So I think next year now, as those guys get more experience, you can see if they can go out there. You want to see guys dominate Summer League, right? When guys are ready to play in the NBA, they dominate Summer League that summer. So I think it's important to see guys like Kolek, guys like Daddier, guys like Huckporty, not just play in Vegas, but look like the best players on the court in Vegas. And those guys need to be part of the rotation next year, because with the CBA guys and the second apron and all the rules, and it's very hard to add talent once you're at the salary level the Knicks are. You need your young guys on rookie contracts, and Knicks don't have a lot of draft picks coming, right? They trade a lot of them away. That they need their young guys to contribute. And I think in year two, all three of those guys you mentioned, Dex, you would hope that they're good enough next year to be part of the rotation in the regular season.
That would be the hope, and you hope a coach is willing to play them too. I love that you brought up Jay Wright, and for the reasons you did. And Brian, I don't know how you feel about Jay Wright there. Brian had a
still
list.
Processing.
Brian had a list as he's processing. Brian mentioned Rick Pitino, which I could see his name coming up. This list.
Not a list of coaches that I would like. I don't care one way or another, but a list of coaches that if I would wake up and be like, oh, they hired this person, it wouldn't stun me. Rick Pitino.
Yeah, no, I got you.
Right.
Not endorsements.
Jay Wright, Jay
Look,
Wright.
we got to listen.
Hey, no, they'll do this early. No one has a Rolodex of coaches ready to go. Like, the minute a guy loses his job, I get it. I don't have one of those either.
The people who should are the Knicks.
Yes, correct. And I'm by the way, I'm sure Leon Rose does. By the way, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure he is a short list of 3 to 5 guys. Remember, Johnny Bryant too right now is a finalist for the Suns job.
Yes,
so if they want to go there, they might have to move on that pretty quickly.
With Jay Wright, I guess the reason I bring this up, because you brought it up, John, is we know this, we've covered sports for a lot of times, especially in the NBA, you want to appease your stars. How much of getting a Jay Wright, even though I think everything you brought out, the fact that he can coach, he can play the 5-out system, which is good for today's NBA, how much of this would be to appease Jalen Brunson, who we know was a Thibs guy? He shot down any talk of there being changes in the final press conference he did of the year with Thibs. How much of this would be to appease Jalen Brunson? And if they do get Jay Wright, are we doing too much with the Villanova connection here? Are we going too far with the Nova connection here? Or do you really believe like Jay Wright is the kind of college coach that can come here and do a good job in the NBA?
I think bringing in a college coach is risky. Billy Donovan's had some level of success at it. I did not mention Danny Hurley for a reason, by the way. I just don't think his temperament would work.
Agree.
With pros and with the New York media.
Yep.
Like, I think that would be a implosion by December where you're like, oh my gosh, this was just a horrible mistake.
No, I think he's right. I think John is right.
I think that would go south very quickly.
I agree.
And by the way,
I would not be a fan of it.
And I'm a big Danny Hurley fan. I covered him when he was the head coach of Wagner in Staten Island. I was doing games for the NEC. I know Danny. He's a good dude. He's a good coach. I'm just not sure this would be the right fit for him. And I would not hire Jay Wright just to mollify Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson is the ultimate team player. He will play hard and play well for whatever coach you hire. You hire Jay Wright because you think he's the best coach to lead you to a championship. Brunson's going to be on board with whatever you do. Now, do you consult him? Do you talk to him? Absolutely. But look, this is probably, I'm not going to say his last chance, but does Leon Rose get a chance to hire a third head coach? I don't know the answer to that.
Mm.
He probably
Well,
should. I think he's done.
Sean Marks has hired 4 coaches across the town. So,
And again, I think Leon Rose has done a great job. I'm not advocating for him to lose his job. He's been fantastic and wonderful. He's brought the Knicks out of the abyss. I have nothing bad to say about Leon Rose. But he has to hire a guy here. What do they have? A 2-3 year window at most? At most, NBA
At
windows.
most.
You know, everyone thought the Celtics had this like 3-year window, and now all of a sudden their window's gone because Jason Tatum tore his Achilles tendon, and their window's gone. It's just gone. So there's no like, all right, let's see if this works and figure it out. No, you need to have somebody ready that you can bring in and can win in year one. There is no developing a coach. There's no waiting around. That's out. Forget that. Like, this guy has to be ready to go right now. So Jay Wright's a guy that knows how to win. He's a good coach. But again, it's college and not the pro. So that's a question the Knicks are going to have to answer when they make that decision. But I would not make that move just because it would make Jalen Brunson happy, because I have enough faith in the captain that he's a guy that no matter who you bring in, he's going to get with the system. He's going to support the head coach, and he's going to be a real good leader for this team.
Yeah, I guess with that being said, this is why Johnny Bryant would surprise me a little bit, understanding that he's familiar with the organization and is an associate head coach now. But also, do you want to throw a young coach into this?
Yeah.
Like, is there a young coach who's going to be ready for this? It feels like, I don't know, but it feels like you would go for someone who has some measure of experience and maybe a winning environment, winning situation. Don't know who that's going to be, but evidently they're going to have a list. But I don't know if this is a scenario where you throw someone in who's like 39, 40 years old and hasn't been a head coach for very long.
Which again is why I was so hesitant to make a move on the head coach.
Yeah.
But look, I guess if you're going to make a move, and we talked about how short this window could be, right? You can't wait, right? You know, if you make the move after, and you're not going to make a move mid-season. That's you're not going to win a championship if they're making a move mid-season. It doesn't work that way in any sport.
Right.
So then you're looking to make a move after next year, and then the new coach has a 1 or 2 year window to try to win. So I get that perspective where if you're trying to win in this window, you have to make the move now. So you give this coach a little bit of a runway, 2 or 3 years to try to get it done. But look, that's why when you asked me the first question, guys, and I said this is a very risky move, and I will give Leon Rose some credit because it would have been very easy to be risk averse and say we won 50 games. If not for a historic blown game in game 1 against the Pacers, which, you know, that's going to haunt all of us that want the Knicks to win for decades, the same way the Reggie Miller, 8 points in 8 seconds game haunted us. But, they were within that blowout from going to a game 7 of the Garden, potentially going to the NBA Finals. And it would have been very easy to say we should have won that series if not for that, historic blown game at the end, which I don't think was on the coach. And let's just run it back and try to get better with continuity. Because look, you see when you bring these new teams together, even the 3 superstar lineup in Miami didn't win a title their first year, right? It took them a little bit to figure things out. So that would have been the easy thing to do. So I will give Leon Rose credit here for taking a little bit of a chance, because this is a chance. This is a risk. And you're betting on trying to get better here, and you just hope that whomever you hire, you don't get worse.
The chat is touting Mark Daigneault and saying that the Knicks should hire somebody young. And what I would say to the chat is Mark Daigneault was hired in 2020.
That's exactly right.
Like,
no, you're right. You're 100% right.
Like,
and I was going to bring him up too. And I'm like, hold a second. It took him 4 years to figure it out.
Yeah.
Right.
But not even that. More importantly, the team was like, what were they doing in 2020?
They were not good.
They had just made it to the playoffs and traded Chris Paul. And they were developing a very young team. The Knicks don't have time for any of that.
Yeah, he developed with the players, correct?
Right. Yeah, he developed with he was developing his coaching style and his coaching voice with the players. And then Joe Mazzulla is not necessarily the model because there were extenuating circumstances as to why he was there in the first place.
Right.
Correct.
And they had to just pick somebody out and was like, you know what? You got to coach.
That's why
the Knicks can't follow those 2 models. You don't have time for any of that.
That's why if you're going to me to go with a younger voice or an unknown voice, I would say, if you're going to go the Johnny Bryant route, which I'm, again, not opposed to, but also be honest, as John said, we don't know, right? I just raised my hand and said that I thought David Fitzgerald,
whoever it is, they have to be good.
Right.
And you don't know that.
The reason I bring up Johnny Bryant, as John was saying too, is like with Johnny Bryant, at least you know that there's some familiarity in the organization.
Sure.
I'm not saying that determines coaching success. I'm not saying that.
Right.
But I can see the logic behind going that route. But John, I think what we're saying in all this is no matter what we say, no matter who they go with, because of where the Knicks are in their team building and the process right now, they have to get this right? And by getting this right, I mean they have to get a coach that is going to give them a legit shot to now be in the elite of the NBA and compete for championships
Yeah.
in whatever the window is going to be going forward, right?
Dex, as someone that's a older Knick fan like me, I will throw out, like, if I could wave my wand and make something happen that would make me the most satisfied I've maybe ever been as a Knick fan, this is what would happen. Keep in mind, this is completely unrealistic and it's never going to happen. But this is my like dream scenario, that Pat Riley walks into his office tomorrow and there's a fax waiting for him from Eric Spoelstra, and he's resigning.
And he comes to coach the reverse 95 team. I'm here.
That's what I want. It's
I'm
never
here
going to
for
happen. But my God, how sweet would that be if that reality somehow became like what actually happened? That would be great. Oh, it'd be so funny too. I'd love
That'd be hilarious.
It feels like it would be perfect. But
And some people
are
are saying that and someone said Mark Jackson got fired and they brought in Steve Kerr. Yeah, Steve Kerr was an executive like for years before this. Like him going into coaching for the first time is not the same thing. He had executive experience, team building experience, obviously played for a long time, but he was an executive. These are not apples to apples comparisons.
And by the way, look, these guys, and when I say nobody knows, I'm talking about like people like us, right? Like people in the league have more institutional knowledge of these guys. But that's why I went to Johnny Bryant, because you have firsthand knowledge from multiple years about him and what he would be like as a head coach. So that's why I think if you're going with the first year guy, and by the way, I do think it's more likely, just because of the guys that are available, that they go with the guy that's never coached in the NBA before than a guy that has. I just think that the way the candidates are lining up, like, could you imagine if they hired like Mike Budenholzer or something like that? Like, you would have people like rampaging on the streets.
Philosophically different.
Correct. So like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think that's, as much as we're talking about how that's a huge risk, I do think that's a more realistic scenario right now than bringing in a retread, because you're shooting for upside here. The whole reason you move on from Thibodeau is because you're shooting for upside, not because you're trying to get a guy that's going to raise the floor. So like if you made me bet right now, I'd probably say Jay Wright or Johnny Bryant, but who knows, man? Like Leon, the good thing about Leon Rose, he doesn't tell anybody anything. That guy is a closed book. Things don't get out. We'll see. I bet you by the end of the week, we'll probably know what's going on here and we'll probably have an answer, but we'll have to wait and see. It's exciting.
We'll have to wait and see. John, appreciate you, man. We have one more guest hopping on with us. Your KFS buddy is going to join us.
Who's coming on?
Jeff Johnson.
Jeff. I'm sure he's going to bring the fire. He's going to be.
He will. We know that he will. Appreciate you, bro. We'll talk soon.
Anytime, boys. Take it easy.
All right. That is John Schmeelk, catch him with Knicks Film School, doing a great job there. We're going to wrap this up show quickly. We have one more guest. It's a guy who sat here with us. What game was that? Couple days ago? Not even that long ago. Game four. I believe it's our guy, Jeff Johnson from Knicks Film School, who joins us now. Jeff, what's going on, man?
I genuinely am shocked.
Really?
After all this time, I cannot believe that the snack wrap is finally coming back to McDonald's, baby, in July. We are back in action. I was once blind, but now I see. Snacks across the country are going to be secured once again.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned this. Right in time for the summer. Can't wait.
Yes.
Very excited about the snack wrap.
You better have got your summer body now, because the snack wrap is dropping. That's out the door.
I was in the gym today. I'm good.
It's a sad day, bro. Overall, I think it's a sad day. For me, I appreciated Thibodeau's story about how he dedicated his life to coaching. The Knicks were his dream job. And I wanted to see his dream become reality, because that would mean getting a Knicks championship. Unfortunately, all dreams don't manifest themselves. So it is sad to see this era come to a close, but I've said it, and I've been saying it today. This is a day of celebration for Tom Thibodeau's Knicks coaching career. This is a dude who, you cannot tell the story about the Knicks resurgence without Coach Thibs and instilling a winning culture, becoming the fourth all-time head coach in Knicks history in terms of wins, supplanting Pat Riley and about 20 games below Jeff Van Gundy, I believe. Someone who, it took 19 years to win one playoff series this century with the Knicks.
Yes.
And 4 out of the last 5 seasons, the past 3 playoff seasons, they won at least one. First Eastern Conference Finals in the last 25 years. Tons of great moments from this era as the Knicks were establishing a foundation, the foundation that made Jalen Brunson willing to sign here, the same foundation that led to the Josh Hart acquisition, the Devo shot in the Garden, Hartenstein, the rise of Mitchell Robinson, single-handedly breaking the spirit of the Cleveland Cavaliers and giving us one of the old-time quotes: the lights are just too bright. Sometimes you got to wear shades, and sometimes you got to get sunburned. And that's what Mitchell Robinson did. You don't get any of those moments without Thibs as the head coach, man. So I salute him. I thank him for bringing one of my favorite franchises, my favorite basketball team, back to prominence. And I wish it would have turned out differently, but we move.
No, I like that we talked to you to close this because I knew you would have good perspective about Thibodeau, and we haven't really talked about, what he sort of meant to the franchise, and I think he has meant a lot to the franchise. But you said all dreams don't come true, Jeff, and that is true. What is your dream now as a Knicks fan for this franchise in terms of the next coach? What's the dream head coach hire for Jeff Johnson?
Someone who can instill the same principles but be innovative. Modern day principles and schemes with classic values that any championship team can have. I still believe in tenacity. I still believe in defense. I still believe in low turnover rate. All the staples of a Thibodeau team, I believe in that. But I think on the offensive end, in terms of resource deployment and allocation with the rotations and the schemes and the offensive schemes, I do think it is time to get into the 21st century and employ a strategy that maximizes the current roster that you have. So I don't know who the name is. From an analytical point of view, I don't think a name, a capital N name, is necessary. I think somebody who's willing, who's open-minded, who can command the respect of the locker room, and who can project manage this team adequately enough to get them over the hump is something that I'm looking for. Above all else, you got to maximize the guys that you have. Thanks to CJ McCollum, now you got to hit on rookies and second-year guys and fringe players and to be able to contribute to your rotation, because all them aprons are going to leave you kitchenless and without a meal if you go over it. So now you got to look at guys like Kevin McCullough, Pacom Dadier, Ariel Hukporti, Tyler Kolek. You got to hit on these guys, at least two. For one reason, to be a contributing member of your roster and potentially be included in future deals down the line.
Yep.
You see what happened when you developed RJ and IQ and these players, Quentin Grimes. You see what happens when you can develop them to a point where they either contribute to your team or they can be part of larger deals. And in this new NBA, you need these young guys. People are expanding. The way the culture of the league is now, it's expanded rosters, is more opportunity for younger players to succeed. You find somebody who has a skill set, you utilize them. It doesn't matter if they're the first guy starting or number 11 off the bench. This is how you develop diamonds in the rough. And this is what the Knicks need right now. It's imperative for them as you look at the landscape of free agency, the second apron, cap issues, even though the cap is going to raise. This is the type of strategy that's required in order to maximize your present and secure your future. One other thing I do want to say about Coach Thibs,
Sure,
and
go.
shout out to my guy Mills for this. He got a lot of people paid, bro. A lot of folks paid multi-millions dollars. He is the stimulus package for current and past Knicks. Because a lot of folks wasn't getting the paper. Shoot, Shake Milton, when he got traded to the Nets, he got a deal, a guaranteed deal, just so that they could make that deal. A lot of guys. iHeart,
Yep.
who's currently in the NBA Finals.
Yeah.
He doesn't get that deal if he's not on Thibs' team. A lot of guys got paid. IQ, RJ, OG Anunoby. Let me hold a dollar, fam.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys who got paid because of Coach Thibs. So that's why I said whether you loved him, whether you hate him, whether you outgrew him, whether you longed for him, no matter what the case is, this is a time to salute that man for what he did for the franchise while also having the foresight to say, okay, this era is over. It happens. Nothing lasts forever. It's the circle of life. Now we got to move forward.
Yeah.
Jeff, you mentioned your criteria for the next Knicks head coach. One, do you think that the person is out there? And two, how much, I assume this is going to be a lot, but how much do you trust Leon Rose to be able to find it? Because I think you do this knowing that you have somebody in mind, and we're all trying to figure out, obviously, who that is. So how confident are you that they're going to nail this?
I look at Leon Rose's track record, and I have the utmost confidence. He's hit more times than he's missed. If I had to put a percentage, I'd say he's probably at 85% hit rate. You know, the Fournier and Kemba didn't work out. There's some other moves that you could look at that you say in retrospect might not have been the best move, but overall, he has a lot of hits on his resume. There's not a lot of skips on his track listing right now. So I have the utmost confidence. In terms of who's out there, Brian, Mark Daigneault was in the G League, coaching, staying low and building. And they found him, and look at him now.
It took a while, though,
I don't know
Jeff.
who the guy is. I don't know who the guy is, but I know the guy is out there, or the woman is out there. I'll say the coach. The coach is out there. I don't know where, but if it's one thing I can count on is this current Knicks front office has their hands across the NBA. They are in all corners of the NBA. They like shadow brokers, their analytics, their cap dudes. They have their connections through various agencies and previous working relationships. You got guys like Worldwide West, who's the most connected. They'll find somebody. If they don't have, I'm sure they have their targets, but I'm also sure that they will find somebody. But I don't think this is the arduous task that some folks are making it out to be. You have a criteria. It's similar to quarterbacks in the NFL. Organizations value certain things. Based on your valuation, you find the person that best fits it, and you move forward. They need to identify what they want from this roster, because I think that's another telling thing, right?
Agreed.
Firing Thibs means we running it back with these players. There's going to be some changes here and there, some tweaks. And at this point with Leon Rose, expect the unexpected. You ain't safe. You ain't safe until opening night, right? So I do expect there to be some personnel changes, but nothing sweeping. This is the first move. If this crop and this core can't get it together, if it's one thing about Leon Rose, he doesn't wait and he's not sentimental. He doesn't have the capacity or the luxury of being sentimental. He was hired to do a job, and that's what he's going to do. You saw it when they broke up the Nova Knicks. You've seen it in other aspects. Thibs is the preferred coach of your A1 player, your main guy. Business is business. So I have the utmost faith that they can do it because their track record proves that the Knicks fans should put the full weight of their support into whoever Leon Rose hires. Having said that, Mike Malone, no.
I'm going.
I heard Budenholzer and I almost jumped out my window.
Oh, man. Come on.
Because look, if you was going to do that, you might as well have kept Thibs.
I agree. I agree with you. What about? I'm gonna throw another name at you for that. You know, the people that like the names, Jeff, are gonna say this. Monty Williams.
Who?
Listen, these are look. I'm you. We are all.
Ellis?
We are all on the same page here, but there's gonna be, this. This happens with players. This happens with coaches, Jeff.
My man said
Guys want
Monty
names
Williams.
that they know. They don't fit, be damned. They just want names that they know. I agree with a lot of what you said. I agree with a lot of what Brian said. Schmeelk said it too. Our other guest, Gerard Hector.
Yes, sir.
I think it's going to be a process on
Mhm.
this. And I love that you came on to help us close the show out and salute Thibs for what he did, because I do think is worthy of saluting him for what he did and moving forward to the future and saying, okay, this guy did good work. Now it's time for a change. Can they get to the next level? I'm with you. And the last thing I'll say to wrap, I don't think there's going to be sweeping changes. There's a lot of people out there that want KD, that want Giannis. I don't think those trades are happening. But I do think the players are on notice. This is what I want to hear your thought about.
Yes.
Are the players on notice now because of this move by Thibs? And then we'll wrap after this. But are the players on notice because Thibs is gone? And you're right. That's the A1 players guy in Jalen Brunson, but he's not here anymore, right? It's on players have agency. We've been talking about this all season. It's on them now to step up and get this job done. Or do you look at it differently?
No, you said it perfectly. And listen, I'll take it another step. Any of them players are upset today, go back to game 1.
Facts.
Of Pacers Knicks.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all had just as much of a hand in this as Thibs did. Because if they win that game, who knows? Maybe this was the series for his job. Maybe this was like reality TV, right? One series for your life. Right, for your career. One series for your career.
I like the voice there. I like that.
right. You hear do. So maybe he was coaching for his career, for his Knicks career here. And maybe if they win game 1, but they lose in 7, maybe he's still gone. But do know that this whole conversation, even with all of the controversy and debate around whether or not Thibs was the right guy for this roster, that conversation took a left turn when they blew game 1. So if you're a player and you mad, he did not blow that game. And I said that after it happened.
You did.
Or not even on Monday morning, Sunday afternoon quarterback. They blew that game. So yes, now when you fire a coach or relieve him of his duties, I'll euphemize it. It's on you. It's on you now. We've hypothesized about what ideal fits would look like and roster deployment. You get the guy that can do it, and y'all come up short in any way. Don't expect to be on the team next year. Don't expect everything to remain the same, because now the accountability, which should mostly fall on players, is now going to be a majority on these players. And that doesn't absolve whatever coaching staff comes in here or even the front office. It's on y'all now. It's on y'all now to make it happen. So we'll see.
We will see. Jeff, we appreciate you, bro, for coming through and giving us a couple of minutes on this day. And I think you said some great words about Thibs.
And the snack wrap.
Going forward. And the snack wrap. Letting people know that's going to be back. Some people are really excited about that. I don't really do McDonald's much anymore, but I understand it's exciting for a lot of people.
I mean, you dabble. It's summer. At some point, you might not find
McDonald's. At some point, I'm a dabble in the McChicken. Okay.
there's one not far from where we're at. It's actually dangerously close.
Listen, that part of Manhattan too. It's like the Green Goblin mask talking to you. Man.
We had a coworker come in the other day. He made a choice and got the McDonald's. I was a little bit judgmental of him, but you know what I'm saying. I understood what he was doing.
Midtown, you got way better options. I ain't gonna hold you. With Midtown, you got way better options.
There's better options than McDonald's.
The
right?
salad spot is still over there, right around the corner.
Which spot?
The salad spot. There's still a salad spot.
Oh, we got a couple salad spots. We got a couple salad spots
right next to right next to the bakery, or like the sweets, the dessert spot. Yeah, it was like oh my God, I can't remember the name. It was like Chopped or something like that.
Yeah, we have a Chopped around here. We got a Naya, although these people are not sponsoring the show, so I should be saying their names out. But we said McDonald's already. So what the hell?
I mean, at this point, we're already careening down.
They
the
don't
hill
need
already
sponsorship
now.
help.
There's a deli
Media.
we won't talk about around here that I'm not supposed to talk about. So it is what it is. Jeff, go get yourself a snack wrap, man. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate
Thanks,
it, bro.
I'll talk to you soon.
And he said soon, bro.
Later, Jeff.
That's Jeff
Appreciate
Johnson
it.
from Knicks Film School. We appreciate him as always for joining us. We're gonna put a bow on this. We thank you guys for rocking with us for a little
Got
bit.
a lot of
over
comments, a
an
lot of
hour.
fire in the comments.
There's a lot of fire in the comments. Now, somebody said something earlier that I thought was a little funny. They were like, "Yo, the Knicks police, the Minutes police won." I'm like,
I mean, they did. They did. They lost all their battles to win the war. They won.
Look, man.
What could you say?
I thought Jeff really spoke well of Thibodeau, and I think that was necessary for the show, and I thought that needed to be said.
Yeah.
If you're a Knicks fan for a long time, you know, and you talked about this, especially a Knicks fan who's your age or younger, you've seen nothing but dark days. You ain't seen much winning, okay? You haven't seen much winning at all. Thibs helped revitalize this franchise. Did he have flaws as a coach? Absolutely.
Every coach has flaws.
Every coach is
Even
flaws.
the
There's
best
no perfect
ones.
coach out there.
Seriously.
And listen, there's a lot of people, a lot of fans out there that think they can coach better than some of these coaches, right? And it's like, you don't know more basketball than Thibs. You don't know. But when you look at his record, when you look at everything that he's done in his 5 seasons as coach, the winning percentage, the playoff appearances, this guy did a great job. There's no doubt about it.
He's the best coach they've had this century.
He's the best coach they had this century,
You know.
hands down. He's the best coach they had since Jeff Van Gundy.
Since Jeff Van Gundy.
He's the 4th all-time winning coach in Knicks history. If you put a Knicks coaching Mount Rushmore, since y'all like to do all the Mount Rushmore things, he's there.
He's technically on it. Yeah.
He's on there. Like he's absolutely on there.
That's crazy.
No doubt about it whatsoever. Do I think that the Knicks needed to evolve a little bit offensively
Sure.
and in ways of thinking about the team? Yeah, I do. 2 things can be true. I can praise Tom Thibodeau and say how great he was a coach. I can say that he had flaws and think that this was a time. Look, I thought they should have brought him. I thought he was going to come back, and I was fine with Tom Thibodeau coming back
You mean for this season?
for this season.
Okay.
But I also somewhat respect what Jeff said too. That I have to respect Leon Rose for. It would have been easy to be risk averse, as was the words Jeff used. He's right about that. It's always easy to be like, this is comfortable. I'm gonna stay here.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna change.
Especially when you get to the Final Four for the first time in 25 years.
right. And the Knicks sent a message though, as an organization, that we're not comfortable.
That they want better.
We want better. That's okay.
That they
It's good.
expect better. It's
Expect
probably a better way of putting that. Actually.
Wanting, expecting,
Sure.
but you got to get it right and get the better.
So
and
that's
do
the thing. Like, this is, I said this about the Karl Anthony Towns trade even last year, where that was a big risk, but one that they could afford to take. This is even riskier, in my opinion. It's not to say they're going to get it wrong or what have you,
No,
but
but
like
it's a risk.
a lot of people are like, hey, just find the next Mark Dagnall. And it's like, okay, I mean, that's cool. I mean, it took 5 years for Mark Dagnall to be Mark Dagnall, or maybe 3 or 4.
Right.
But like, this is going to be, I think Jeff, where he said like it's a little bit overstated, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think this is going to be very interesting to see how this pans out. And hiring the person is one thing, and then actually watching it unfold is another. Like, just because
season fun.
Just because you make the right hire, somebody gets hurt in January and they're out for the season. Like, this is how sensitive this time is. So getting it right is one thing, but also the roster construction around it is going to be very interesting. We did get a comment earlier that I found interesting, being like, they asked or said or something along the lines of whether or not this is tied to free agency. And I don't know if that's the leap I'm going to make yet, but I do think this move does signal, hey, they're going to try. If we're talking about they expect better, they want better and all these different things, I don't expect the roster to look exactly the same as next year.
I think if you're to that point, Brian, before we wrap, I think if you can be aggressive with the coach, you can then be aggressive with the roster.
Yes.
Now, when we say aggressive with the roster, I think a lot of people are going to take that saying, although I do think John Schmeelk brought up a good point in that it could be Cat moving. It could be trading Cat and saying that because of what he said, specifically what he said, which I wanted to say.
Which we talked about this season.
We talked about it through the playoffs. When two of your best players, your 2 all-NBA players, are your 2 worst defenders, and teams can attack that at the point of attack, and then your center, that is a problem. And this is the point I was trying to make through the playoffs. There's no coach that's going to fix that, guys. I've been saying that.
Yeah.
You can't take a poor defensive player, as long as Cat's been in the league 10 years, and think all of a sudden it's a coach or there's something Thibs could have schemed.
They tried, by the way.
Right.
They got OG Anunoby. They got
Right.
Mikal
They went and got
Bridges.
Winks, which made sense.
They started Mitchell Robinson.
But you saw in the playoffs, the elite level teams are going to hunt that over and over again. Now, to your point that you just said, if you're changing the coach, which is a risky move, you might just bring a coach that has a philosophy that aligns with where you want to go. You always want your coach and your GM to be on the same page, ideally. Does this work? Now, the coach and GM also to be in the same page about the personnel, the players that are there. So a new coach might come in and say, hey, the way I look at this team and what I try to do, I can't win like that with my two all-NBA players being my weakest defenders. And they may want to make another change. I can't live with Josh Hart, although I love all the stuff he does as a non-shooter. They might have to make that change. So if you're going to make changes, it has to line up with what the whole organization feels. And if the organization is looking at the league, they're looking at this team, which is what they're literally paid to do. Sometimes you got to make changes. I always say this, and I'll close with this.
Mm-hmm.
Sports, it's a job. This is work. It's like any other workplace. Sometimes you work places and you work with people. Everybody out here knows. And sometimes it doesn't work out. And you got to make changes.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people who are in management that are paid to make those decisions, make those changes. They're tough decisions. Everybody's not a boss. Everybody can't be a manager, right? I could be doing the show and an executive producer come and say, hey, Dex, we want you to change this and make this. That's what they're paid to do. And that's cool. Sometimes it's difficult changes to get to where you want to go. We don't know today if it's going to work out, Brian. You don't know. I don't know. We could have theories about it. We will see if it works out. The fans don't know. I think the news is going to be very interesting. I tell people to stay tuned. Stefan Bondi broke this news. Stay tuned to him. I'm sure there'll be more details this week. We're going to talk about it more on New York Got Game. I thought next week's episode was going to be a Strictly Liberty episode. It is not. We're going to be talking a little bit more about Tom Thibodeau and what's going on with the Knicks. There'll be a lot more to talk about in the coming weeks, but I want to thank everybody who tapped in with us to watch this. Brian and I were on our ways home, and I was someplace else, and we came into the studio to get this done. So shout out to everybody, our executive producer, Ryan Sampson, our technical director, Sam Antono, who I know wants to get out of here because we have someplace to be very shortly. Everybody behind the scenes, thank you to everybody in the chat. Some of you who are regulars with us every week live, been with us through all the postseasons. We appreciate you. I got to thank my guy, Brian Fonseca, for rushing to the studio and coming to do this. This was a lot of fun. We have a lot more to talk about this offseason.
A lot more.
We'll be doing other stuff. We'll probably be doing a free agency show, and we should probably know what the coach is by then. So we got a lot to talk about coming up around the Knicks. The Knicks talk will not stop. It will not be done.
Draft is in 3 weeks, too.
Draft is in a couple weeks.
And the reason I bring that up is because that's going to be, it's expected to be in NBA circles, a trade-heavy period.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of contracts that don't quite get guaranteed until the 1st of July or June 28th or whatever. So there are contract decisions that need to be made around the league. So we're expecting trade talks to heat up. And I expect after this, the Knicks will be involved in some of that because they know, they expect more. They know that that also means not just the coach, but bettering their roster and exploring all the avenues to improve. So we'll see what happens.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Again, thank you everybody for tapping in. Thank you everybody for watching this edition of New York Got Game Live. We'll catch you next time. Peace.